2019 is come and gone, and with that we've received so many PSVR games. It's been a fantastic year, but just like last year, there were some games that missed the target. And once again, I've brought in Solo Vision to help me discuss some of these disappointing titles. Keep in mind that this is a most disappointing list, not a worst list, so most of these games are still decent. With that being said, here are our most disappointing PSVR games of 2019. Summer Funland. Having your own personal theme park is a magical idea, and as VR reaches its peak, this idea has been expanded upon and made possible. Summer Funland promised a full theme park available inside of your VR headset, and while it gave us a full theme park, it wasn't a very good one. Summer Funland has a few good attractions, but the majority of the park is filled with short, boring, and sometimes annoying rides and games. It seems like we'll have to wait just a little while longer for this dream to be realized.
Warzone. At first, this game felt like a pleasant surprise. With little to no coverage or advertising, most of the community was not expecting to see Warzone hit the PSVR in 2019. But once Warzone was quietly released, it became very clear why nobody seemed to be paying any attention, let alone anticipating its launch. The game released without multiplayer, with clunky mechanics, limited game modes, terrible AI, and that's only the beginning. The game was doomed from the start and really makes you look at the developers with a crazy, confused look that can only be explained with this kind of quality control.
Eden Tomorrow. What I hoped to get out of Eden Tomorrow was a fun adventure with a compelling story and awesome set pieces. And while it delivered in some ways, it has a lot of slow and forgettable parts that keep it from reaching the heights of similar games like Red Matter or Farpoint, and it fills up a good amount of the game. Eden Tomorrow is still an enjoyable game, but just didn't meet my expectations.
Mars Alive. One of my favorite books of all time is The Martian by Andy Weir. Weir tells the story of an astronaut marooned on Mars and his struggles to survive this alien planet. It's a heck of a read, so naturally when I heard about Mars Alive, I was excited to finally experience this survival story firsthand. Sadly, the game struggled as a dull walking simulator offering mediocre graphics and unintuitive crafting and discovery systems, and simply did not do the interstellar travel genre any justice on the headset.
Rage Room. Rage Room was said to be a sandbox game where you can go crazy on dummies with a wide variety of weapons. Sandboxes can work really well in VR when done right, but Rage Room isn't one of those games. The main thing you need to land in a sandbox game is the physics, but in Rage Room the physics are off. For example, when you hit an enemy with a sword, it instead feels like it's rubbing against the enemy. There isn't any sense of impact or realism to the physics, which ruined any potential the game could have had.
Spire 1. Honestly, Spire 1 was one of the most anticipated games for most players to hit the PSVR in 2019. Finally having a true stealth-based Metal Gear Solid-esque shooter in VR was meant to be a defining moment on the headset. Unfortunately, the game's release only proved how much these broken promises really can hurt. The game suffered from terrible AI and mediocre gameplay mechanics, leaving players more than dissatisfied with what was thought to be a huge step for the genre.
Reborn, A Samurai Awakens. Over 2 years ago, a trailer was shown off for a PSVR game called Reborn, A Samurai Awakens, with crazy weapons, a futuristic style, and unique combat mechanics. After hearing little information about the game and it getting released out of nowhere, it still somehow disappointed me. Instead of the fun-looking game we saw in the trailer, we got an extremely repetitive and lackluster wave shooter. Just like Rage Room, the weapons are extremely unsatisfying to use, and for the majority of the game, I was just slashing my move controllers up and down really fast.
Chroma Gun VR. Honestly, Chroma Gun isn't really a bad game at all. It's an interesting little puzzle title that requires you to mix and match colors within your environment using your Chroma Gun. The real disappointment with Chroma Gun came with the anticipation set by players and indulged by content creators alike. It was the idea that the game was somehow similar to Portal, setting the bar incredibly high for a game that in my humble opinion has no more similarity to Portal than Portal does to Tetris. Sure, they are both puzzle games, but just because they both have the same white-walled testing facility look doesn't make them comparable. And sadly, Chroma Gun's launch suffered from this level of anticipation in my opinion.
Jupiter and Mars. Jupiter and Mars was one of my most anticipated games of 2019. The trailer showed beautiful environments, an amazing soundtrack, and interesting gameplay. But instead of the amazing experience I hoped it would be, it was instead a boring one. Like other games on this list, Jupiter and Mars has several good aspects, but what holds this game down is the gameplay. The entire game is about exploring areas and unlocking new paths. My problem is that there just isn't a whole lot to do. And to make matters even worse, some of the areas in the game look the same as other areas, making it easy to get lost.
Contagion VR Outbreak. It seems like we are getting zombie shooters left and right these days. However, Contagion was one of the zombie titles I was most looking forward to. It appeared to be the first VR zombie title to provide the intensity of the zombie outbreak as the city turns to chaos right before your eyes. Sadly, the first level of the game seemed to be the more engaging of missions provided at launch, and Contagion's gameplay loop made for too much predictability and no real sense of dread in these frightening times.
And those were 10 of our disappointing PSVR games for the year of 2019. Let us know what your most disappointing PSVR games of this year were down in the comments below. And make sure to check out Solovision's channel for more fantastic PSVR content. And now for another year of PSVR, with some inevitable disappointments.